Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Wookieecast. Today we're here with Michael Moreci, so thank you so much for sitting down with us today.
Oh, thanks for having me on. I'm really thrilled to be here.
I'd love to get into a little bit of how you first got introduced to the Star Wars franchise.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably the number one question, right? Like, how do we all come to it? Something that's been around and with our lives for so long. I actually remember I have a unique, a pretty distinct memory from when I was a kid. Um, my uncle, gosh, I had been like 4 or 5 years old. My uncle had gotten a bootleg copy of Empire Strikes Back on Beta, which is, the predecessor to VHS. This is how old this is. And I remember it circulating around my family and getting to watch it when it kind of made its way to my house. Sorry, George Lucas, for the piracy, but couldn't buy stuff back then. So um, I remember watching Empire then, and I always try to remember, like, had I seen A New Hope before that or after? And I don't remember. I do remember, like, New Hope was always on TV on like WGN and stuff like that. So it was around pretty regularly, and I watched it pretty frequently. But I don't remember like the chronology if I saw Empire, this bootleg Empire first, or if I saw A New Hope first. But either way, I was really young, when I got introduced to Star Wars. Because when I was, a kid in the early 80s, you had Empire coming out and you had Jedi coming out. So it was really present before I went, in a sense, dormant after the release of Jedi all the way to, 1999 with Phantom Menace.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Do you remember the first one that you saw in theaters proper then?
Yes, it was the re-releases of the original trilogy. I think I saw all three. I can't remember if I saw Jedi or not. I definitely saw the re-release of when they were like remastered and Lucas did his thing with it. I definitely saw New Hope, and I know I saw Empire, but I can't remember if I saw Return of the Jedi or not. But that was my first theatrical experience with Star Wars.
Yeah, it gets a bit like big screen, so I know it's a memory for a lot of people. Um,
Oh yeah, I'm jealous of the people who saw it, that at that time, when New Hope was first released. I mean, Empire was released when I like a month before I was born, so I was a little early for that. And then Jedi, I think I must have been 4 years old. So those were a little bit too early for the theatrical experience, unfortunately.
did any characters particularly stand out to you back then?
Yeah, I mean, I've always loved Obi-Wan. I don't know if I thought it was just so cool. I mean, just a great character, and Alec Guinness is obviously so wonderful, but I don't remember if it was because like he was this cool ghost, more or less, like, and I thought it was so neat that he was like so powerful that he was able to still mentor and guide Luke in very, essential but selective ways. And I just really love that idea that he was so strong and so peaceful, I guess, that he was able to still fill this role of a mentor and father figure to Luke, even after he had made a sacrifice for Luke as well. And that always really stuck with me. And Obi-Wan's always been my favorite. Like I said, I love Guinness as an actor, and then I love Ewan McGregor. So I've been very lucky to have fantastic people playing, my favorite character. So yeah, Obi-Wan's always stuck around in my mind.
It's really interesting. And then obviously got the younger version of him later on, which is interesting to see how his character develops.
Yeah, for sure.
Um, how did you first get into writing professionally?
Oh gosh, professionally for Star Wars or professionally in general?
Both, probably. Or if they
Oh.
were the same time, then you know.
No, no. Let's see. So the shortest version is after I got out of college, I went to Northwestern and I had finished up, this is actually grad school, and I finished writing a novel for my thesis project. And I graduated, and I really just wanted to do something that was not that, it was still creative writing focused, and that's why I went throughout college, but it was very still academic in the sense that it was restricted by what the department wanted and faculty wanted and things like that. So it wasn't, you weren't really free necessarily to do whatever you wanted. So once I got out and had a taste of freedom, like I really just wanted to do stuff that I loved, which was genre and, comics. So I tried my hand at comics, and it's one of those things where I was very fortunate. I mean, I did a lot of work. I've written so many comics. I can't even count. But like, I mean, before I was even published, just kind of writing, crafting, and honing and learning and all this kind of stuff. And I got a little bit published and a little bit more, and one thing led to another, and I got an opportunity to contribute to Hack Slash from Tim Seeley, and that's where the series I did called Hoax Hunters was born, and that was kind of my breakthrough, I guess you can say. Everything I had done, but prior to that, was pretty small press, and really, really indie until Hoax Hunters with Hack Slash and with Image. And it kind of snowballed from there, like that's where I say the one thing led to another. Um, so really my start comes from like almost an aversion to everything that I'd done for so long, being in school and being in grad school. And Northwestern's it's a great school. It's a very, I don't say rigid, but it's a very,
Traditional, maybe?
what's that?
Traditional, perhaps?
Traditional. That's a great word for it. Yeah, it's a really traditional way of educating, which was great, and I learned a ton. But then I kind of had a knee jerk to it once I had the opportunity to have some freedom and got away from it, and that's where the comics writing and genre writing was really it really took off at that point. Now, as for Star Wars, boy, I have been barking up that tree for a really long time. Star Wars it's just my favorite thing. I just love Star Wars. I have since I was a kid. It was my Rushmore, as they say, of like things that I wanted to write. And I don't write, for those who are familiar with my work, I don't write a ton of IP. I don't really write for Marvel and DC. I'm just not that, it's just not for me, which doesn't mean that that's bad. It is for other people. That's wonderful. It's never been for me. I've always had more of an emphasis on creating my own work, and making my own thing and carving my own path. But there are particular IPs that I do love, worlds that I love, and Star Wars was always at the top of that list. So I try to break through, you do the normal thing, or you talking to editors and pitching them and, kind of weaseling my way to, knowing people at Lucasfilm and also pitching them and, just trying to carve out opportunities, which is hard, like it's very competitive. There's a lot of people who want to do that and a lot of people who currently were doing it and are still doing it who are really good at what they do. Um, so I ultimately decided to make my own Star Wars comics. I found some other Star Wars hardcore nerds like myself, and we were just like we were all people who couldn't get our foot in the door, but we were so passionate about it. So we were like, well, let's just do our own. Let's just do it for ourselves, and let's just, publish it for free. That's this you don't have any legal entanglements. You can it's basically fan fiction, and as long as you don't charge anything and no one's making any money, nothing is changing hands. You can do it. You can get away with it. It's fine. So we're like, okay, we'll do it for free and we'll just put it out. And we did it twice, and we got like a crazy amount of downloads. I mean, I haven't checked them in years, but it was in like the six figures of hundreds of thousands of downloads for these comics. And they kind of drew a lot of attention, and I think that's what's eventually, I think the combination of like that the comics were really well done. The art was great. I'd like to think my stories were good. And how persistent I was is what eventually kind of just nudged the door open just enough so I can get maybe not a foot in, but like a toe in. Um, and then once I got an opportunity, there's a story that Tom Brady, tells where he talks about, he chronicles his time as a quarterback and how in high school he wasn't the first string, in college he was like the fifth string, and then he was drafted in the 200th pick, and professionally he was like the third string. And he always said, like, he tells a story, that to his friends that like if he ever got on the field, they'll never take me off. Was his always his promise. And I think that was my mindset as well. It's like if I ever get a chance, if I ever just get that toe in the door and get an opportunity, like I'll never stop. And I haven't. I've been very fortunate. I wrote Flight of the Falcon was the first thing that I did when IDW was still doing Star Wars comics, and I've been doing Star Wars regularly since, and that's oh gosh, 7 years, 8 years, something like that.
2018, yeah. Or at least that's when they came out. So
18. Okay, yeah. So like, what is that? 7 years? Yeah. Wow. Oof. It's a while.
um that's really interesting. Did they give you the story seed ideas for Star Wars Adventures, or was that something that you maybe pitched and came up with these? Because they were very episodic and very, there's just a lot in Star Wars Adventures, basically. Lots of,
Yeah. Yeah, Star Wars Adventures was a weird animal, because there was never, very seldom at least, like issues that lasted more than a story or
yeah.
maybe two. And they had a lot of reasons for it. And they sort of made sense about like, they're geared towards kids and you don't want to have kids be like, they just want to pick up a comic and read it. And I get that idea. But Flight of the Falcon was a little different. It was a whole initiative that Lucasfilm was doing like across lines, like the Marvel comics, the IDW comics, novels for older adult novels, then younger reader novels, and it was just basically, I guess in a sense, paying tribute to the Millennium Falcon. I believe this is right around the time that Solo was coming out, a movie that
Mm.
I absolutely adore. So the idea was like, let's tell some stories, like cool stories about like the Millennium Falcon. So that was the launching off point. So I was brought in specifically to tell that story. Now that changed like how I, pitched stuff later on down the road once I started working there more, but it started with them basically giving me an assignment to be part of this initiative. And it was fun. It was a ton of fun. Like I said, I love Solo, I love Han. So being able to like capture this little moment of like, oh, okay, we're gonna tell some cool stories of like people getting involved with the Millennium Falcon. It was a pretty great place to start, in my opinion.
Yeah, that was definitely one of the Star Wars adventure stories that had several parts, where
Mhm.
sometimes they don't. A couple of years, like that you had stories that were kind of standalone. Look, loyalty test, squad goals, and the Battle of Horizon Base. Were those ones that you were able to kind of come up with a little bit more wiggle room with those?
Yeah, yeah. The more it went on, the more we got, or at least I had opportunities to carve out like my own stories and my own ideas. That wasn't always the case because sometimes they would have stuff going on, that they were like, hey, let's specifically tie into this or let's specifically tie into that. And we would, myself and the editor there's a few that I worked with who were all absolutely wonderful. We would find stories that like fit whatever needs Lucasfilm had at the time for a movie that was coming out or a series or whatever the case may be. But there were times where I would be able to go to them and say, "Hey, what about a story about this? Or let's do something with this character." The thing that I learned with Lucasfilm is that like they're very generous with ideas. It's just you just have to know what ideas to pitch. They're not going to tell, you're not going to break canon and you're not going to fill in important canon, like you'd have to find like the little kind of nooks and crannies of the mythology to say, let's go explore this space over here with this character that, it's not going to be in a movie. It's not going to be, they're not saving it for something else. So there's fertile ground here and it's interesting enough to tell a story and it's kind of like left of center enough that like that's the zone that you can kind of explore without stepping on anybody else's toes. And I discovered that early and it made life a lot easier, because it helped me get ideas off the ground. And Lucasfilm told me that like they get so many pitches that are like, let's tell what happened at Ord Mantell. And it's like, we're not doing that in a comic. Like, and I get it, like that's a big thing. And maybe they're not doing it at all, but like there's some really kind of precious stuff that like you just don't want to you just want to stay clear of. And if you can stay clear of that stuff, then you can find a lot more opportunities to get some cool stories told nonetheless.
As a writer, do you have any favorite time periods that you particularly enjoy writing from if you're given the opportunity?
Oh, the prequels, easy. Slam dunk. I'm always writing the prequels. That's why it's like, Bad Batch now, my Grievous graphic novel that's coming out. Like if I can just tell prequel stories, because there's so much. I mean, it spans the Clone Wars spans so long, and there's so I mean, granted, you have the animated series, you have the prequel, the three prequel films. You have a lot of books, and you have a lot of content in that area. But like, there's a lot. I mean, that's what makes me like I love the Bad Batch. I just love those characters so much. I think they're so much fun. But what also draws me to them is that we don't meet them, in canon in the animated series until the end of the war. So they have all of these missions and all of these adventures that we never saw. What were they doing during the war? And there's a you can tell 100 stories in that time period, and even their series, as you know, like goes after the war. So you have like just tons and tons of time and stories and all sorts of things that you can do with them. And I think that's so cool. But and also it's helpful that it fits into my favorite period of the Star Wars timeline, the
Yeah.
prequels.
That kind of does lead into the next quarter line of questioning, the Clone Wars Tale series from a few years ago, which was set kind of in that prequel era. How
Yep.
did the idea for that series come about?
That was one that I pitched. I just wanted to do clone stories. Um, so I was like, well, Captain Scott, who's a friend of mine and another great Star Wars writer, he does the Vader tales. And they're all just like stories, if you're not familiar, and I'm sure you are, but anybody who's listening, like they're just stories told through different characters' perspective. They're all telling the stories, So like, what if we just basically did that with the clones? What if we did Clone Wars, Battle Tales? And I thought it was just super fun. It's one of the most fun stories that I've done, and I love that collection. Unfortunately, the timing was a little bit bad because that came out shortly before, not maybe I mean not right before, but very near to IDW losing the Star Wars license. So we would have done more. The idea was to do more volumes of that. Um, but time wasn't on our side. IDW lost the license, so we only got the one book,
If memory
which is
serves, it was also
unfortunate.
near COVID, I think. Was it?
It could have been. Yeah, it had been somewhere around that time. Yeah, I believe so. I believe you're right.
Yeah, I remember picking up a few of them and then not going back for the rest of them because I wasn't out of the house. So, it's really interesting. Um, one thing that we had asked about that series was from the fifth issue, there's a world or, well, planet or moon, I'm not exactly sure, called Caliban. And it was often pointed out that that's the same name as a character from Shakespeare. And we were curious if there was any connection.
Oh, that's a great question. I don't think so. I'm trying to remember. I'm trying to like remember now. I named it Caliban for a reason. There's always, and I don't know if people, no one's probably, I'm probably the only one who knows this, but I have weird references to movies and books. My kids are named after some planets, they're canon Star Wars worlds, technically. But I can't, Caliban, there was a reason, and I feel like it might have something to do with the Alien franchise. I can't. Oh man, I don't think it's Shakespeare. I wish I were that smart where I can say, "Oh yeah, totally it was Shakespeare," and actually even know what character that's from. But I, it's not that. Sorry.
Fair enough, figured to ask. Um, Speaking of Easter eggs, though, are there any that you'd particularly like to call out? Because Wikipedia loves to document sort of trivia if you've ever slipped your birthday into a droid's name or something like that.
No, but there is a reoccurring uh um not droid, blah, clone that I've created, Heater. Um I've used him a few times, and it bums me out no one's picked up on it. I'm like, man. why hasn't anybody noticed? I've been using the same clone over and over. Like, how many true, squads is he in? I don't know at this point, but a few. Because he was in Battle Tales. He appeared in I believe it was I did a Mace Windu Duke Count Dooku two-parter with IDW. That unfortunately that was one that like came out in issues and never even came out like in a collected graphic novel because that was like the last IDW comic and that didn't even get collected
Oh.
in the book. So that's kind of like gone. It's like out of print. Um, but he's in that and he may be appearing again. Hey, well, I guess I'm spoiling. He is appearing again. Something that I'm doing forthcoming. Heater makes another appearance. So like there, yeah, I guess it's not an Easter egg, but it's like he's like my clone. He keeps popping up all over the place because I'm like, I need a clone. I was like, okay, well, let's just throw Heater in there.
And plot armor. Nobody else kill him off, please.
No, oh gosh, no, that would be terrible.
There was also something similar that people notice with the Hyperspace Stories comics having how do I pronounce it? Vivian and her doll in
Mhm.
several comics as a common thread. How was that developed into how you kind of put that in consistently?
Yeah, so that was something that was hatched when Hyperspace Stories started, that was basically like Dark Horse's version of what IDW was doing. Same thing of like these all ages comics. And when it started, Dark Horse and Lucasfilm brought in Amanda, Cecil, and I to like map out the first 12 issues, I believe it was. Yeah, because we each did four. So it's 4, 8, 12. Yeah. So we each did four issues. And we're like, well, let's have it be one of the things that Lucasfilm wanted to see in this iteration of the all ages comic was like a continuing story, but not one that's so laden with narrative that like kids will lose track, of what it is. So it's kind of like a glacier, it's like that's like most of it's kind of running beneath. And like for those who pick up on it, cool. You didn't need to read it. You didn't need to like recognize Vivian and the doll and all that kind of stuff. The issue still stood alone on their own, and then there was like this little kind of thread running through. So the problem though is that like, and I don't know what happened, but I think there were just some growing pains with Dark Horse and Lucasfilm of being on the same page of how to release and when to release. And while I do think the issues were good, it wasn't anything of quality, but like there's a lot of delays between those issues. Like they were
Mm.
just coming out months and months apart. So I think it's a miracle that anybody like picked up on that story thread because it's so minor. And like issue two is out in, February and issue three is out in July. And it's like, who remembers, like this minor detail? But I'm glad some people did. But that was the plan. Like, just like, hey, let's have this cool story about this girl and her doll and like how it evolves. And like, it's kind of like the Flight of the Falcon, the same idea, like how the Falcon is kind of weaving in and out of the Star Wars narrative on the whole. It was the same thing with Vivian and her doll, like dropping in at these kind of interesting points of the Star Wars timeline. That was at least the thinking. I just think the delays were just a little too much for most people to kind of really put those pieces together.
I guess if anyone would notice, it would be Wookieepedia editors. So
Yes. Yes.
it
Thank
does
you.
kind of remind me of Forrest Gump, actually, I guess, in that he kind of shows up at every single major event in history, and it's like kind of like that.
Yeah, no,
Interesting.
100%. That's a great, it's funny. I just watched that like 2 months ago. So it's fresh in my mind. So yes, it is a lot like that. It's a great point.
Alongside your work in comics, you've also written some short stories for anthologies, stories of Jedi and Sith, and from a certain point of view. I'd love if you could talk about the character you created for one of them, Iman Kref, from a certain point of view, because you kind of developed his whole backstory for that.
Yeah, wait, remind me which story this was because there's the mall story.
This is the from a certain point of view. It's Beyond Hope, and it's the Empire Strikes Back kind of like anthology.
Oh my gosh. Wait, what was that story? What
Um,
happens in that? I'm so bad at
all
remembering
good.
you.
Iman Kref was a character that you created. His homeworld was Kashaga, and he was in the Rebel Alliance. If you don't remember, it's totally fine.
No, because he was a soldier, right?
He was a soldier, and he was present in the Battle of Hoth, and they kind of wanted all 40 of these authors to add bits to Empire Strikes Back.
Yes, sorry. Sometimes I have to dust off even things that I've written. I'm like, what was that? No. So yes, I do remember now. So sorry. Yeah, basically, like I was really coming at it from a perspective of like I love I one of my favorite Star Wars authors, very, very high at the top is Alexander Freed. Um, and he wrote the Battlefield book, the first Battlefield book. And I just loved, and I was totally riffing on what he was doing or extending what he was doing, however you want to say it, but like definitely inspired. He made it was the first time I feel like the war, because we are at war in Star Wars. It's even in the title. But like he's the first person who made it really feel like war. They're soldiers and they're grunts and they're dying and they don't have supplies and they don't have food and they don't have proper armor and they're dealing with a lot of like uh, bad leadership and they don't know what the command is or what the orders are. It just felt like a traditional like war movie that you'd see from Hollywood in like the 50s or the 60s. And I really, really love what he did there. And I was like, man, let me see how I can if I can do something like that, really like, because in the movies you get like Han and you get Luke and you get this perspective of like the Jedi, basically. I mean, it changed a little with Rogue One, and it started opening up more to it. But originally, it was like, you would think the war was just being fought, from Luke's point of view, and it's like, he's a Jedi and has a lightsaber, but then meanwhile, there's all these other people who are just ground soldiers who are in the rebellion. So with that story, I wanted to do something that like tapped into that vein and really kind of dug into like what are we doing here? Like is this worth it? Like is it because from there, I'm sure like if you're really thinking about it from the rebellion perspective, like you're so outnumbered, you're so outmatched, you're far from home, that there's all these really hard things to encounter, and it's like really kind of questioning all of it, questioning your choices, questioning the war, questioning can we win? Is there a reason to hope? And I really wanted to get that from like that really, for lack of a better term, like the grunt, the soldier in the trenches and see Star Wars through those eyes, which is not a perspective that you get very often.
It's really interesting. Do you recall if there was like any background extra that you sort of imagined may or may not be him, or was it like a character that you thought was off screen, sort of?
Yes, you know what? I did find him in Empire. I remember watching and really slowly like freeze framing and be like, there he is, he's that guy. Um, so I do remember actually, because I remember really trying to get the timing down, like of like I watched the Battle of Hoth. When I wrote that story, I watched the battles of Hoth scene so many times. I was trying to get the timing down. Like, when does this thing explode? When are the AT-ATs coming? How close are they? Like, what is the sequence that we're seeing? So what he's experienced aligns with the canon of the movie. That was really important to me. It's probably maybe it's not a big deal. It's a big deal for me to be like, how can I get this really to align with the events of the film? And there are some like when what is it? It's like their communication satellite or tower or something like that explodes. Like he's Amen is near that tower, whatever it is. You see it distinctly in Empire Strikes Back, and in my mind, he's like right near that. And I wrote that into the story, and hopefully it becomes distinct. Again, it's one of those things that probably most people don't, draw those things together. But I really wanted to make it as, it's both as tactile and as true to the battle that we know as possible.
I mean, it is very helpful. There are admittedly some contradictions in books, and so it is helpful when everything kind of aligns. And I guess it saves future storytellers any problems if there's no contradictions in lore,
Try
no
our
matter how
best.
small. And if not, Wikipedia will probably document that.
Yes.
Um,
It's good, which is good. It's
yeah.
good to have a record of both, like when it's working and when it's not. Because I've had times, I've had emails from people who are like, actually, Mace Windu couldn't have been here at this time. And I was like, "Ugh, oof, woof, sorry."
That makes sense. So next year you have Hyperspace Stories Grievous coming out. Anything that you would like to tease about it to maybe encourage readers to pick up a copy?
Yeah, I can taste two things. The art is so good. Like it is ridiculously good. The layouts are unique and very dynamic. I haven't seen a Star Wars comic look like this. It's almost like if people are familiar with the work of Daniel Warren Johnson, it kind of reminds me of that. It's a little dirty, it's the lines aren't super clean. And like I said, the storytelling is so unique. There's so many chances being taken. This is not a product of me. I didn't draw it. I had nothing to do with it. But like the artwork is so absolutely wonderful and different, and it's unlike any Star Wars comic that I've ever seen. And I'm just so thrilled with how it's turning out. And then from a story standpoint, like it's dark, I think. I'll be honest, knock on wood, that Lucasfilm doesn't hear this and change their minds. It's too late now, but like it's dark. It's a dark book. I mean, I know this isn't, ostensibly in the kids line, but it's Grievous is front and center. So I mean, like it is about a villain, and it's not just about him being bad. It's really about the reasons of why he is, the choices he's made to lead him down this path. And there's some pretty gnarly decisions that he makes, and they work in conflict. And I don't want to give too much away with a Jedi that he's up against, and how they really test each other, test their resolve. And I think it creates a dynamic that is, again, it's very rife with moral and philosophical complexities. Like I really, the thing that I notice about kids, and I have kids and readers, that they'll go with you, like I think it gets taken for granted how smart kids are and how insightful, that like if you give them something complicated, like they'll get it and they'll go with you. And I think they appreciate it because they have more of an open mind than adults do, probably. I think it's safe to say. So it's pretty bold and it's different. It looks different. I think it feels different. And I really like that about it. It really makes me excited for this. I just think yeah, I think it's going to be really great and really special.
I'm excited for it. It's real nice to see this. It's like kind of a series of these hyperspace stories. So I'm glad to see more of them coming out.
Me too.
Um, One question that we normally ask is, have you ever used Wikipedia in writing any of your works? And if you could pick one of the articles that you've probably looked at the most, what would it be?
Oh God, all the time. I'm always going for ships. I'm always trying to figure out like who is in what ship, what kind of class is it? Like the ships, for some reason, I never can remember. Like, especially when I'm in the like I just made a mistake in a script that I wrote recently where I was like, okay, these characters are probably in this kind of ship, like this. And I was like, to me, I'm like, this makes sense. Like, this should work. And it's from this time, but then we're doing something particular in it. And the editors were like, no, 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 that's too small. We need to find something bigger. So I'm like on Wikipedia. I'm like, okay, what? Okay, we're in this area, of course, of the prequels. I'm like, what class, like what kind of ship, like, so I'm always looking for ships, like just to get that right, because there's so many ships and so many generations of them that it's like, and if you get it wrong, like people know, I've heard it. I just got slapped on the wrist. They're like, no, 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 this is wrong.
Hey, at least they caught it.
Yeah,
Before and I'm sure the artists probably struggle with that a lot as well because drawing a very specific ship because there are very subtle differences in some of them.
yes, and yeah, those subtle differences. Like I've gotten hit on that as well. So like I'm always trying to look for resources, and I also have like the cross, whatever they're called, like the books that are like the cross sections of the ship, and I'm looking at those too. But those are so laborious. They're hard. They're so hard to find what I'm looking for. So God bless Wikipedia for making my life easier.
Glad to hear it's being used. Um, and then one kind of final question to wrap up the lore part of this interview is someone asked that there was a lot of alien species in the recent Ghost Agent series. Do you have any process for which aliens you're choosing to include? Is that up to the artist? Do you have any favorites?
Yeah, I usually leave it. I'll make suggestions. I typically try to make my scripts, for lack of a better term, like artist friendly, because realistically, when it comes to the aliens, like I generally don't have a specific need for it to be this or to be that. You know, like if I do, I'll say it. Like, no, 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 this character has to be a Wookiee or whatever the case may be. It has to be this for what we're doing. But generally, I'm like, well, let's just find something that looks cool, like, and that you like to draw, like. So I'll make suggestions. I'm like, well, I'm thinking this, if it's a bounty hunter, that's not going to be seen again or whatever. So, like I'm thinking, I'll say in the script, it could be this or that, but like if you have a preference, then just go with that, and have fun with it. Like I always want to give opportunities. The same thing with like layouts, like, like I'll say like this could be two panels, this could be one. I always want to be flexible to give the artist I'm collaborating with, you know, the ability to collaborate basically, to make decisions and contribute as much as possible. I used to write in a way that was much more rigid. And I've definitely loosened up a lot because I think the more autonomy and contributions the artists have, I think the book's just better. I wish I would have learned that, at an earlier age. And I was never not including artists out of any other reason than like I thought that like the script had to be like Bible, like that had to be like, okay, we've got everything locked in. So there's no guesswork, but like guesswork is part of the creative process, and figuring things out and having flexibility is valuable. So when I'm doing stuff like that, unless it's a ship, it'll it's like I'll give options, say, hey, would it be cool if we use like this or that? And sometimes Lucasfilm will chime in and they'll say, we're using this type of alien somewhere else, or they'll have like nebulous reasons for why don't do this, but come over here and use this type of species
Like
instead.
this species went extinct for this time period, so don't do that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. Yeah, like these they're nowhere near where you are or something like that. So we're like, okay, then let's forget it.
That makes sense. There was a couple aliens that you did introduce for the first time in like the Cube from the Battletale series, kind of like furry snow Ewoks.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, fun.
do you remember much about those?
Um, no, I just wanted something like with the so basically that issue was like it was like this meta issue, and I remember this because going back to Alec Guinness. I don't know if you've ever seen the Bridge over River Kwai, but like it's an Alec Guinness movie where basically they're POWs who are forced to make a bridge, and it stars Alec Guinness, who's obviously Obi-Wan. So I'm like, what if we did Obi-Wan doing Alec Guinness, um, and basically a Star Wars remake of an Alec Guinness movie where they're building a bridge, they're captive, and they're building a bridge, but also like, okay, no child is going to get this reference, and that's fine. You don't need to, but like, let's add some fun, element. I'm like, okay, well, how about a super cute, like you said, snowy one, like that they can like be building the bridge around. And I thought that was like, and then they turned out to be pretty good warriors, like the Ewoks. And I thought that
Yeah.
was it was pretty cute. I enjoyed doing that. Gosh, I forget who's the artist on that. I'm so bad at this. I feel like
Philip Murphy, I think.
yes, Phil, you wonderful, wonderful job. So that was a fun issue. I really like that one.
I did write that article for Caliban, so I guess I admit that's where some of the questions come from. But
Oh, nice. Okay.
um, um, so I wanted to thank you so much for sitting down with us today and ask where people might be able to find you online to keep up with you and your future work.
Yeah, and no, thank you again for having me. This is a great talk, and I'm always happy to talk Star Wars. But yeah, I don't do a ton on social media. I'm in Blue Sky, and at Michael Moreci on Instagram. Um, and that's kind of it. I'm on there sparingly. So I know people have like messaged me and I don't get back for a while. It's not because I'm ignoring anyone, it's just because I'm not there.